What if everything you thought you knew about World War II was just the surface of a far darker truth? Hidden deep beneath the official history lies a secret so forbidden, so chilling, it was erased from all records. A weapon not made of guns or bombs, but of time itself. Tonight, we open a box that was never meant to be opened, a story of classified experiments, impossible technology, and the terrifying price paid for bending reality. Step carefully. Some truths are deadly. In the winter of 1939, as Europe teetered on the edge of total war, a momentous decision was made not in the halls of power, but in the mind of one man, Albert Einstein. Long associated with pacifism and humanism, the world-renowned physicist found himself isolated, frustrated by U.S. suspicion and hounded by federal agents wary of his German origins. The FBI's case file on Einstein, now unsealed, reveals a psychological profile describing him as ideologically unstable, disillusioned, and dangerously influential. On December 12, 1939, a ship departed the port of New York under heavy fog, its passenger manifest falsified. It was the last trace of Einstein on American soil. By February 1940, Nazi propaganda outlets released a stunning broadcast. Einstein had defected to the Third Reich, escorted to Berlin in secrecy, and embraced as a national treasure returned. Western leaders at first dismissed the announcement as enemy trickery. But when a grainy newsreel showed the unmistakable figure standing beside Heinrich Himmler and speaking in German, denial gave way to panic. What followed reshaped the trajectory of World War II. Einstein was brought not to Berlin proper, but to a fortified facility deep within the Bavarian Alps, codenamed Project Lichtbringer, Project Lightbringer. Hidden in a decommissioned salt mine, the Nazi atomic program was struggling, hobbled by internal rivalry, scientific dogma, and technical bottlenecks. With Einstein's arrival, that changed overnight. Though Einstein had previously signed a letter to President Roosevelt warning of Nazi nuclear ambitions, in this timeline, his own conscience cracked. Alone, hunted, and bitter toward the very democracy he felt had betrayed him, he accepted the role, justifying it as a way to end war quickly. Under Einstein's guidance, the Germans bypassed years of dead-end experimentation. He demanded conditions, civilian advisors, non-military oversight, and the release of Jewish scientists from camps to assist in the project. Unbelievably, Himmler agreed, at least on paper. A cabal of physicists, many once imprisoned, now worked side by side with SS officials, their workbook pages stained by blood and chalk. British intelligence became aware of Einstein's cooperation in 1941 through an intercepted communiqué to Tokyo describing a theoretical breakthrough in plutonium refinement. Prime Minister Churchill was reportedly shaken to his core. MI6 retasked its best operatives to sabotage the project, including famed infiltrator Gareth Langley, whose mission in 1942 to assassinate Einstein failed spectacularly. Captured, Langley was tortured for months and finally released in a prisoner exchange, but not before revealing key Allied strategies under duress. In August 1943, a successful chain reaction at the secret facility marked a chilling milestone. Germany was now capable of weaponizing atomic power. By January 1944, the first crude device, code-named Donnerkeil, was loaded aboard a modified Heinkel bomber. Its target was not London or Paris, but the sea. On February 2, 1944, a flash tore across the English Channel. A nuclear explosion vaporized a Royal Navy convoy, creating a mile-wide fireball and a new kind of warfare. Though the death toll was relatively low due to the location, the psychological impact was catastrophic. The Allies reeled, civilians fled inland, and U.S. plans for D-Day were postponed indefinitely. The Germans did not bomb cities, not yet. Hitler believed the mere demonstration of such a weapon would force surrender. But the Allies did not yield. Instead, the world entered a period of brutal stalemate known to historians as the atomic brink, a frozen front where armies stood ready, but none dared escalate. Behind the scenes, Roosevelt ordered the acceleration of the Manhattan Project, and Soviet spies redoubled their efforts to uncover the secrets Einstein had taken with him. Einstein, meanwhile, began to unravel. Secret letters smuggled out by a resistance made detail a man tormented by guilt, questioning his choices. "I am chained to the bomb I created," he wrote. They parade me as a prize, but I am their prisoner. According to captured Nazi correspondents, Einstein argued against further use of the weapon, refusing to participate in the development of a second, more portable device. His influence waned as SS physicists took control of the project. In July 1944, Allied bombers discovered and destroyed the outer layers of the Bavarian facility. It's unclear whether Einstein was killed in the blast or taken deeper underground. A Soviet special unit reportedly scoured the ruins months later, finding only fragments of notes and a charred chalkboard etched with quantum calculations and the word vergeben, forgiven. The war dragged on for 2 more years. In 1946, the United States detonated 2 bombs over Dresden and Munich. Germany capitulated, but Europe was ruined beyond recognition. Berlin became the epicenter of an atomic wasteland known as Zone Zero, a place uninhabitable for generations. The post-war trials revealed horrors inside the Lichtbringer facility: human testing, irradiated captives, and a prototype bomb that never launched, capable of leveling half of France. The legacy of Einstein's betrayal haunts the modern world. Statues of him, once universal symbols of genius, were removed or recontextualized. Schools teach his theories with disclaimers. Conspiracy theorists claim he survived, living under Soviet protection. Others say he died anonymously in the Alps, buried beneath tons of rock and shame. One image remains burned into history: Einstein standing at the edge of a bomb crater, arms folded, face blank, while behind him, a mushroom cloud rises. Whether he was a villain, victim, or visionary, one fact remains: when he crossed the ocean, so did the future. The early hours of June 4, 1942, were remembered by Americans as the day the Battle of Midway began. But in an alternate version of history, that date marked something far more terrifying: the opening strike of Operation Ketsuaki no Yuki, Blood Snow, Imperial Japan's audacious plan to invade Alaska and open a direct land front against the United States. It began with a sudden radio silence from the Aleutian Islands. Dutch Harbor, Unalaska, and Kiska, all vital outposts, went dark within 24 hours. The U.S. Navy assumed mechanical failure until a single coded transmission broke through. They came from the snow. That was all. Unbeknownst to American intelligence, Japan had been planning the invasion for nearly a year, building a fleet of ice-hardened transport ships, trained Alpine assault troops, and cold-weather tank units. Under the direction of General Yamashita and Admiral Nagumo, Japan had secretly converted their northern fleet into a high-mobility invasion force, betting on the U.S.'s obsession with defending the Pacific to the south. By June 6, Anchorage was under siege. With shocking speed, Japanese troops swept through the sparsely defended coastlines. The Americans, thinly spread and unprepared for winter-style combat during summer, found themselves cut off and overwhelmed. Supplies were stranded at sea, as U.S. convoys diverted toward Midway and the South Pacific. Within a week, Sitka had fallen. Within 2, the Japanese flag flew over Anchorage's bombed-out Parliament building. Captured Japanese field diaries, found decades later, describe bitter fighting in the Alaskan interior. Resistance came not from soldiers alone, but from hardened frontiersmen, native Alaskan tribes, and volunteers from Canada and the contiguous states who braved snowstorms and gunfire to repel the invaders. The harsh terrain proved a double-edged sword. Japanese troops advanced quickly, but supply lines broke down. Blizzards buried equipment, and frostbite claimed more lives than gunfire. Still, their foothold held. President Roosevelt declared a state of continental emergency. The U.S. public, previously confident the war was an ocean away, now faced the possibility of Axis boots on home soil. "They are not coming, they are here," Roosevelt said in an emergency radio address, rallying the country behind a new military doctrine, Fortress America. What followed was a 2-year campaign of staggering attrition. The Japanese constructed outposts deep in the Alaskan mountains, fortified with steel and ice. Using long-range artillery and bomber support from carriers stationed in the Bering Sea, they attempted to press eastward toward Yukon and northern British Columbia. Canada, caught by surprise, rushed to reinforce its western frontier, marking the first coordinated American-Canadian defense force in modern history. Perhaps the most chilling moment came in October 1942, when intercepted communications revealed that Tokyo was planning Phase 2, a push south into Washington state via the Yukon Corridor. The plan was codenamed Operation Kaminari, Thunder. Had it succeeded, Japan would have flanked America's western defenses and crippled the West Coast's industrial power. It never did. Nature, as always in Alaska, had the final say. In January 1943, an unprecedented series of storms hit the region, 5 blizzards in 14 days. The Japanese command, overextended and unable to airlift supplies, lost nearly 30% of its remaining force. Vehicles froze in place. Horses died. Communications snapped. A resistance unit calling themselves the Ghost Wolves struck isolated outposts under cover of storm and darkness, their tactics later studied by NATO special forces for decades. Among them were former loggers, Inuit hunters, and even escaped convicts, each with their own reason for fighting. By spring 1943, the U.S. launched Operation Stonewall, a full-scale counteroffensive led by General Omar Bradley and General Simon Buck, a native Alaskan whose knowledge of the terrain proved decisive. Using sled-mounted artillery and snowmobile cavalry units, they pushed the Japanese back, outpost by outpost, valley by valley. Casualties were enormous, but the tide had turned. The final battle of the Alaskan front occurred on August 19, 1944, at Denali Pass. It was not just a military engagement but a symbolic one, the highest point of North America as the battlefield for its soul. Surrounded, frostbitten, and starving, the remnants of Japan's once proud Northern Division made a final stand. American troops, led by Buck and reinforced by airstrikes from B-24 Liberators flying out of Fairbanks, obliterated the last line. Prisoners were few. Survivors of Denali described snow-soaked red for days, bodies frozen mid-scream. The Siege of Tokyo, so named ironically for its boldness and symbolism, was over. In Japan, the failure of the Alaskan invasion was never officially acknowledged. Military officials scrubbed all references from public record. Only in the diaries of Admiral Nagumo, discovered after his suicide in 1945, was the operation given its final epitaph: "We found the edge of the world, and it swallowed us whole." The American psyche, however, had been permanently altered. Alaska, once viewed as a frozen afterthought, was now revered as the site of America's most brutal victory. Entire towns were rebuilt as memorials. The phrase, "Remember Anchorage," became a rallying cry for post-war unity. Veterans of the Arctic Campaign formed the Order of the White Flame, a secretive fraternity that influenced Cold War military doctrine and trained Arctic specialists for decades. To this day, some believe remnants of the Japanese forces remained hidden in the Alaskan wilderness, surviving off the land, refusing to surrender. In the 1970s, a bush pilot reportedly encountered a man in imperial uniform carrying a rusted rifle, who vanished into the trees. Whether truth or myth, the story continues to fuel fascination. Modern historians debate whether the operation delayed Japan's defeat or accelerated it by draining resources. What's certain is that for 2 years, the Northern Lights danced over the fire of war, and the icy silence of Alaska echoed with gunfire, screams, and the stubborn heartbeat of a continent refusing to fall. Among the strangest wartime records to emerge from the shattered remains of the Third Reich are the documents labeled Schattenskrieg, the Shadow Wars. For decades, historians dismissed them as myth, the fever dreams of Nazi mystics and delusional SS officers. But scattered testimonies, buried archives, and a handful of vanished Allied agents tell a different story. In this timeline, the Nazis didn't just pursue tanks, rockets, and bombs, they pursued something else. Something not of this world. The obsession began in earnest in 1936, when Heinrich Himmler commissioned a secret wing within the SS called Abteilung Schwarz, or Section Black. Inspired by ancient Aryan myths and driven by a fanatical belief in supernatural supremacy, their mission was simple: uncover lost powers, rewrite reality, and weaponize the beyond. Himmler believed that ancient civilizations held knowledge capable of reshaping the war and the universe itself. The centerpiece of this project was Wielsberg Castle, a grim, dark tower in Westphalia, Germany. Within its circular chambers and crypt-like halls, occult rituals were conducted nightly. The castle's floor plan was designed to mimic ancient Norse cosmology, with a central black sunroom acting as the axis mundi, the point where all realms connected. Diaries recovered from defectors speak of chanting in dead languages, human sacrifices, and tears in the air like glass being peeled back. In 1942, Abteilung Schwarz claimed a breakthrough. Under the codename Project Nibelheim, the SS gathered ancient relics looted from Egypt, Tibet, and Mesopotamia, including a stone idol covered in untranslatable glyphs. In July of that year, during what was officially described as a midnight harmonic alignment, the Nazi occultists attempted to open a dimensional rift inside the castle. According to German military logs, all power in the region failed simultaneously. Black smoke poured from the tower. Guards reported hearing screams not in the air, but inside their minds. Afterward, the SS sealed off the site. Only a handful of top officers were allowed entry. Those who went in either emerged with eyes blank and bleeding, or never came out. Rumors swirled within the Wehrmacht. A door had been opened, and something had stepped through. Meanwhile, British intelligence, through the Special Operations Executive, caught wind of unusual activity around Weilsburg. A rogue agent known only as Merrick infiltrated the castle in December 1942. He transmitted a single message: "This isn't war. It's worse." Merrick was never seen again. In the months that followed, strange reports filtered in from both fronts. Soviet troops in the Eastern Front near Kursk described entire German units found dead in their trenches, their faces contorted in silent horror, no wounds, no signs of combat. American soldiers in Italy recovered a journal from a dead SS captain that simply read, "They don't listen. They only feed." Some claimed the Nazis had lost control of what they had summoned. In early 1943, Himmler secretly established Front Dritt, the Third Front, an internal force not tasked with fighting allies, but with containing outbreaks of dimensional anomalies. These soldiers, known as Die Jäger des Schattens, Hunters of the Shadow, were issued flamethrowers and medieval swords blessed by obscure religious sections. Their opponents were not resistance fighters or allied paratroopers, but entities that reportedly emerged from folds in space, shadowy creatures immune to bullets, sensitive to light, and seemingly capable of possessing the minds of men. A Czech prisoner's smuggled account tells of a Weilsburg experiment that opened a hole full of stars and nothingness, from which a being of impossible geometry emerged and whispered in 10 languages at once. Afterward, everyone in the facility either disappeared or clawed their own eyes out. The location was bombed by the Nazis themselves 2 days later. In 1944, fearing that Germany was spiraling into madness, a secret Allied task force, Operation Black Mercury, was launched with the sole objective of infiltrating and destroying occult Nazi operations. Comprised of intelligence officers, exorcists, scientists, and a Catholic priest with a mysterious past, the team parachuted into Bavaria. What they found defied explanation. The remains of Weilsburg Castle were in ruins, but the underground chambers still thrummed with an unnatural hum. Strange symbols continued to glow even after the power was cut. Within the central chamber, they discovered an enormous circular mirror cracked but still intact, behind which, one operative claimed, the reflection moved when we didn't. Only 2 members of Operation Black Mercury made it out alive. One was institutionalized, speaking only in backwards Latin until his death. The other went silent and vanished under a new identity. When Berlin fell, the Soviets reached the castle first. According to later testimony by a defector from the KGB, the Soviets didn't destroy Weilsburg, they sealed it. Concrete 30 feet thick was poured into every chamber. Airlocks welded shut. Radiation sensors installed. The structure was erased from official maps. To this day, satellite imagery shows a circular anomaly in Westphalia where no vegetation grows and birds refuse to fly. Post-war interrogations of captured SS officers only deepened the mystery. One stated under truth serum, "We tried to bend reality. But reality bent back." Another claimed that Hitler himself had been shown a vision of an alternate Earth ruled by deathless beings, and that he ordered the rift closed permanently. Too late. The world moved on. History recorded tanks, guns, and atomic bombs, not rituals, creatures, and gateways. But deep within NATO's classified vaults exists a black dossier marked with 3 words, the Third Front. Those who have read it never speak of it. Those who deny it ever existed tend to disappear. And in quiet corners of Europe, where the wind howls strangely and shadows stretch against the moon, some still whisper that the door was never fully closed. Berlin, 1941. Germany stood at the height of its power. Paris was under occupation, London under siege, and the Eastern Front had begun its ruthless sweep toward Moscow. Hitler appeared invincible, until he suddenly wasn't. On October 10, 1941, Adolf Hitler vanished from public appearances for 26 days. Officially, he was said to be ill, recovering from exhaustion at the Berghof. But intelligence intercepted by British spies hinted at something far more bizarre. A private courier, posing as a Wehrmacht technician, defected to Lisbon and handed MI6 a fragment of an internal SS document stamped Project Doppelgänger, Stufe 4, Project Doppelgänger, Stage 4. It would take decades for the full picture to emerge. The implications remain staggering. Adolf Hitler died of an acute cerebral hemorrhage on October 12, 1941. His inner circle, fearing the collapse of Nazi Germany in the power vacuum, replaced him with a genetically engineered clone, an artificial replica perfected in secret under the supervision of Dr. Magnus Voss, a rogue scientist expelled from Kaiser Wilhelm Institute for ethical violations beyond reckoning. Project Doppelgänger had been in development since 1937, originally a pseudoscientific experiment funded through Himmler's Ahnenerbe. The SS envisioned a world where perfect Aryan leaders could be endlessly reproduced. Voss's methods blended radical stem cell techniques, rapid hormone-accelerated growth, and behavioral imprinting based on recorded speeches and personal diaries. But the prototype was unstable, prone to mental collapse. Until, allegedly, they succeeded, with Subject 006. 006 wasn't just a lookalike. He walked like Hitler, spoke like Hitler, and mimicked his mannerisms to perfection. The replacement was slipped into power during Hitler's illness, shielded from public view until the team could ensure full cognitive calibration. Cabinet members were told the Führer had recovered from a mild stroke. His behavior changed because of spiritual reflection. And yet, the change was impossible not to notice. Before October, Hitler had been an obsessive micromanager, immersed in military detail, often demanding up-to-the-minute updates on troop movement and equipment logistics. After his recovery, he grew distant. Reports surfaced of hours spent alone, staring into mirrors. His voice was often flatter, eyes less animated. Generals like Guderian and Rommel noted bizarre strategic reversals, including the fatal decision to halt the advance on Moscow during a critical winter push. One of the most compelling pieces of evidence comes from a speech recorded on November 4, 1941. Analyzed decades later by AI voice matching software, the timbre and vocal stress patterns showed a 12% divergence from all prior recordings. Modern experts call this the mirror divergence spike, the point at which the original and the copy split entirely. The clone, however, began to unravel. In 1942, according to a recovered journal from Hitler's valet, the Führer began experiencing phantom memories and night terrors. He spoke of a dark room filled with needles, of being born in a vat, of voices instructing him to act. He began questioning the nature of his existence. At one point, he reportedly told Eva Braun, "If I sleep, I will awaken as someone else." Eva, too, noticed differences. The Führer no longer played the piano. He no longer drew, something the real Hitler was known to obsess over. His paintings stopped, replaced by strange geometric patterns and spirals. Paranoia set in. Some claimed he kept a revolver under his pillow, not for assassins, but for himself. As the war dragged on, the clone Führer's instability worsened. In 1944, he ordered the arrest and execution of Dr. Magnus Voss, accusing him of betrayal. But Voss disappeared before he could be captured. Some say he was extracted by Soviet agents. Others believe he was killed by SS loyalists to preserve the secret. Toward the end, Hitler's inner circle fractured. Himmler allegedly attempted a second cloning operation to replace the clone, but was stopped by Martin Bormann, who had grown fiercely loyal to 006. The Nazi regime began to spiral, not only from Allied pressure, but from an internal war between those loyal to the idea of Hitler and those who feared what he had become. In the final days of the Reich, the bunker in Berlin became a theater of surreal contradictions. Witnesses said the Führer held long, whispered conversations with his own reflection. He claimed the mirror showed him as he truly was, a soulless construct, a lie sustained by fear and myth. On April 30, 1945, the clone supposedly shot himself in the head. But the body burned in the Reich Chancellery Garden was never conclusively identified. Soviet reports were conflicted. Dental records were partially missing. Stalin, famously, never believed the body was real. He escaped, he said. Or it wasn't him. The most controversial evidence came in 1991, when East German archives were opened and an audio tape was discovered. Dated 1955, it appeared to contain the voice of a man claiming to be Adolf Hitler, now in hiding in the Ural Mountains, being interviewed by what sounded like a KGB handler. The man spoke of being a copy, a puppet used to delay Germany's fall, and warned that the science that birthed him had not died with the war. The final words of the recording, barely audible through static, were, "They will try again. But there is no soul to clone." Whether the tape is real remains a matter of furious debate. But one thing is certain, after 1941, Hitler's behavior shifted from terrifyingly calculating to erratic, delusional, and obsessed with destiny. Did Germany lose the war because of bad strategy, or because their leader had literally become someone else? Some believe the original Hitler would never have made the mistakes that doomed the Reich. Others say the clone saved humanity by being flawed enough to fail. What cannot be denied is that in a bunker buried beneath Berlin, a man died who believed himself to be Hitler, but feared he never truly was. The rain beat hard against the steel roof of the Churchill war rooms. It was May 1940. The Blitz had begun, and the fate of Britain hung by a thread. But deep beneath the surface, in a bunker more secret than even the cabinet's war rooms, a different kind of weapon was being prepared. Not a bomb or a codebreaker, but a machine designed to break time itself. Its codename was Operation Chronos, and its origin traced back to a brilliant, eccentric Welsh physicist named Dr. Llewellyn Vance. A former Cambridge prodigy turned fringe theorist, Vance had spent the late 1930s researching quantum time structures, ideas dismissed by the scientific establishment as absurd. But in 1939, an anonymous package arrived at the War Office. It contained schematics for a device described as a temporal recursion chamber, and a single note: "The war will be lost unless you rewind the clock." Winston Churchill, a man of unorthodox instincts, took the matter seriously. Vance was found in a coastal asylum near Aberystwyth, raving about fixed points and branching realities. After a discreet extraction, he was brought to London, given a laboratory beneath Whitehall, and unlimited authority under the Official Secrets Act. Only 6 people knew the full scope of Operation Chronos. They called themselves the Watchmakers. The device they built resembled a massive bronze gyroscope, housed in a lead-lined vault and powered by banks of unstable radium tubes. At its center, a chair enclosed in a cocoon of metal and wires. The plan was simple in theory: send a single operator backward in time to prevent critical Nazi advancements, delay their campaigns, and rewrite history before it happened. The first successful jump occurred in August 1940. The test subject, Agent Alaric Ash Penrose, vanished from the chamber and reappeared 15 seconds later, aged 5 years and partially deaf. He could not explain where he had been. All he said was, "We're not alone in time." Churchill gave the green light. Over the next year, Ash was sent on 14 jumps, each one longer and riskier than the last. In 1933, he posed as a Swiss chemist to sabotage early Nazi rocket fuel development. In 1925, he infiltrated the beer hall in Munich, subtly influencing Hitler's rhetoric toward paranoid aggression. In 1910, he ensured the birth of a woman named Carla Weiss, who would grow up to lead a future resistance cell instrumental in breaking the Enigma cipher. But time, it seemed, resisted change. Each success twisted the timeline in strange ways. After one mission, Penrose returned to a world where the Eiffel Tower was never completed. Another time, Britain was ruled by a socialist government under Oswald Mosley. In one particularly harrowing case, he came back to find London deserted, overtaken by moss and silence. He screamed until they shut the machine down and sedated him. Dr. Vance warned of temporal inertia, the universe's tendency to snap back to its original form. He argued that only subtle, indirect changes could endure. But Churchill demanded results. The Germans were advancing. D-Day was in jeopardy. In 1943, Penrose was sent on his final mission, to 1890, to assassinate the great-grandfather of Heinrich Himmler. He never returned. Without Hash, the project stalled. But the watchmakers had a contingency, Operation Anchorfall, sending the machine itself back, along with its blueprints, so that it could be rebuilt in case of loss. They launched the mechanism in February 1945, days before the Allies reached Berlin. The chamber vanished in a burst of silent lightning, leaving behind scorched earth and the taste of iron in the air. The war ended. But things weren't right. Historians noticed discrepancies. Photographs from the 1930s bore strange anomalies. People in 1940s clothing standing in crowds. Maps of Europe shifted subtly every few years, as though borders had always been slightly different. In 1957, an RAF pilot crashed in the Scottish Highlands and was found clutching a photograph of Churchill shaking hands with a man in Roman armor. The most damning evidence came in 1961, when a private journal belonging to Churchill surfaced. Dated in red ink, one entry read, "We've won the war, but I no longer know which one. Each time we alter the past, it alters us. I looked in the mirror this morning and didn't recognize the man. Is this the victory we wanted, or a dream stitched from broken clocks?" The journal was buried by MI6. In 1982, excavation crews in Tunisia uncovered a rusted metallic structure buried 30 feet below a collapsed German airstrip. It was a piece of the Chronos machine. Initial testing dated the alloy composition as unforgeable with current technology. A nearby stone bore a Latin inscription, Tempus reditus exigit precium, time's return demands a price. To this day, no one knows where the machine went. Some say it continues to operate, looped in a time spiral, rewriting subtle moments of history to preserve the present from collapse. Others believe Penrose succeeded in changing something so fundamental that the world he saved no longer remembers his sacrifice. But strange occurrences persist. Photos of unknown soldiers appearing in family albums. Journal entries written in handwriting no one recognizes. Whispered conversations in museums where statues seem to have shifted slightly overnight. The ticking of a clock that no longer exists. One final message, allegedly recorded on an old phonograph buried in Churchill's desk, features his unmistakable voice, older, shaken, fading. To whoever finds this, history is not a line. It is a storm. We bent it to our will, but it bends back. God forgive us for building the machine. God forgive me for using it. What we've uncovered today is just the surface of a hidden world. Secrets buried deep beneath the chaos of war, locked away to protect a truth far darker than history books reveal. These shadows still linger, whispering warnings we are not meant to hear. Be careful what doors you open next time. Some boxes should remain sealed, and some truths are too dangerous to face. The question is, how much are we willing to uncover before it's too late?